Hello everyone, welcome back to Simplify. We've been focusing a lot on Trump and tariffs over the last few weeks. Today we're going to revert back to some of our core financial independence content. I want to talk to you about a cultural shift that's happening right now across many different aspects of life. Now, you might have heard the term red pill. Well, the term red pill has been associated with many topics over the last number of years. One in particular that you've probably seen a lot of information on has to do with dating and men and masculinity. And although I've heard those discussions for sure, I started thinking, well, how does this really relate to financial independence? There certainly are some aspects to money that I believe are shrouded in lies and illusion. And so it makes sense for us to focus in on this topic a bit today and talk a bit more about what red pill financial independence might look like. Now, I'll say right off the bat that I have some concerns about this subculture, this red pill subculture. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this concept, think back to the movie The Matrix. In this film, Neo has a choice. He's asked to take either the red pill or the blue pill. The blue pill would allow Neo to return to his everyday life without ever considering the possibility of what's real. The red pill is supposed to draw the curtains back and allow for the truth to come through. And so all the lies that are perpetuated through this system can no longer be shrouded and are available for your consciousness. Now, this concept applied to finances, I think, has some big issues. The first problem is pretty simple. Over time, a lot of financial lessons have been shared through generations, through our parents, and although elements of truth exist in all of these common sayings and thoughts, they aren't necessarily true in our time and definitely fall down under very close scrutiny. So if you are taking the red pill and trying to open your eyes to reality, you're forced to say that this is a lie, and now I have to accept what's on the other end of that, or the opposite reality. And a lot of the people who are pushing the red pill culture are suggesting that these very extreme alternatives are the truth instead of those traditional stories or some of the illusions that might be very popular in pop culture today. I think a balance between these two approaches makes a lot more sense. It's not as simple as taking a pill and then being revealed the truth. If you take the red pill culture under your belt, then you are essentially adopting those methodologies, those thoughts. And that's very similar to just believing the current stories that you've been telling yourself. Now you're just accepting a different reality, and you don't really have any evidence to support that those are the truths. And so critical thinking is really the glue that holds together both of these subcultures, the red pill subculture, the traditional thinking subculture, and how we have to marry all of these ideas to come to some sort of realization in our brains about what we believe and how we want to live our lives. Now, today I want to talk about 5 simple lies in money that have been taught to you by your parents and the media and many different sources for generations and generations. Now, these ideas are not necessarily in alignment with the red pill culture, but I do think it's important that you open your eyes to some of these illusions and how some of these things that you've been taught are frankly just not true. The most important thing I can think of when it comes to money lies has to do with debt. We're told that debt is okay, to accept certain amounts of debt in order to fund our homes, our automobiles, and then other large life choices, potentially even consumer debt for basic purchases. You've been taught that it's okay to use credit cards, and this couldn't be further from the truth. My personal philosophy is very simple here. If I can't pay cash for something, I don't buy it. This includes cars, it includes all major lifestyle choices and purchases. The one thing it doesn't include is property, but in order for me to accept large amounts of debt on a property, another condition has to be true. That property has to cash flow. It has to bring me some positive gain. If that's the case, I'll accept debt, assuming that the cash flow will outweigh the debt payment, the servicing that I have to do towards that debt every single month. In other words, this is an asset that's producing money for me versus sucking me dry and taking my payment every month toward interest, which really isn't helping me. It's perhaps forcing me to save money, which is how a lot of people have viewed property over the years. And then that property has in turn appreciated over time. But there are better ways to invest your money, faster ways to grow your wealth. And frankly, if you're not making money on a property, it doesn't make a ton of sense. Now, there are other reasons to buy property, and you might decide that you want to pay towards debt in order to have a place to live. That is a lifestyle choice. It's a sacrifice. You just need to understand the downstream consequences of that. You aren't necessarily maximizing your wealth building by doing this, but you are potentially maximizing areas of your lifestyle. And so if that's the choice you make, that's fine. You just need to understand the consequences. Now, the second lie has to do with banks. A lot of people think that putting their money in the bank is the best place to keep it. They think it's safe in the bank because they have FDIC insurance up to $250,000. They think banks are institutions that are trusted. They value my money. They value me as a customer, so I will keep my money there for convenience, and it makes sense. The truth is that banks are using your money to make their banks more profitable. They are taking your money, they are taking a fraction of that money, which they have to keep in reserve, and then investing the rest to make profits. Now, this definitely is not something that you can recreate. You're not a bank, but what you can do is invest your money more wisely. You can put it in places where you actually yield a larger degree of interest. You make money over time. There are many different options to invest your money outside of a bank. Things that include assets that produce profits for you make a lot of sense. Index investing is another strategy that I follow and I think makes a lot of sense. So it just depends on your goals. But make sure that you're not keeping a ton of your money in the bank. It's great to have an emergency fund. The bank is a safe place to keep that money. Make sure you're putting that money into a high yield savings account, one that offers hopefully 4% or higher on your money. Now, you're still not breaking even given the inflation rates that we currently are experiencing, but at least you're not losing money by keeping your money in a traditional savings or checking account where you're really not even making 1% on that money. Now, the third lie has to do with thinking about budgeting, making smart decisions about how you spend money, and limiting expensive items in your life like your daily coffee, these little system hacks that are supposedly going to yield you great results. This is not true. Although you can make smarter decisions about how you spend your money, these small decisions about limiting your expenses can only get you so far. There's really no replacement for increasing your income. Making more money is the only way to actually build wealth beyond a certain amount. Now, certainly you can optimize your budget. You can make sure you're not going into debt, not overspending, and not making decisions that ultimately hurt you. This is extremely smart and should be done in all cases. But you're not going to change your financial trajectory simply by cutting out small expenses in your day-to-day lifestyle. You have to make more money, invest more money, and build assets that create wealth in order to actually increase your net worth over time. Now, the fourth lie has to do with education. We are taught early on that we need to go to college. We need that 4-year degree. And in current times, we're told you need a master's degree. You might even need a PhD. Some professional level education is necessary in order to make money. Well, this can be true depending on the specific career field that you want. Sometimes there's an educational requirement, like if you want to be a physician or you want to be a lawyer, you need to go to the respective medical school or you need to go to the law school. That's a prerequisite to enter those career paths. But the most money that you can make that's available to you is usually associated with business ownership, entrepreneurial pursuits. All of the careers that we've talked about have limitations. I work in a professional engineering environment, and whereas it pays quite well, there is a ceiling to what I can make on an annual basis. If you own and operate your own business, there is no limit to how large you can grow, how much money you can make. And so when you're choosing a career path, it's fine to choose a path that aligns with your passions if it's something that you really want to do. Just understand that there are many different ways to achieve wealth, and the highest paying jobs often do not require formal education. In fact, I would argue if you're taking out a lot of debt to follow a career that doesn't necessarily yield the results that you would expect financially, then you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. If you're getting a liberal arts degree and you're going into debt at $100,000, $200,000, you're likely making a big mistake. You don't need to take out that debt. If you want to get out of that situation after you've achieved that degree, there are very few options for you. And one of those would be to become an entrepreneur, to become a business owner. But you could have done that without going through all that education and taking out that debt. Think long and hard about what you want to do. If making money is core to your values, if that's what you want to do to become financially independent earlier in life, pick a career path that will allow you to achieve much greater heights versus pursuing a career with a limit on the amount of money you can make, and especially if that career results in debt for the education required to pursue it. Now, the final lie that I want to talk to you about today has to do with time. A lot of us think that we have all the time in the world to start investing and to start growing our wealth, to work towards retirement. The truth is that you don't. Time is our most precious asset. The sooner you start investing, the better off you'll be. Compound interest is a very powerful tool in your tool belt. You need to use it. The sooner you start investing, even if it's just a small amount, this will make a much larger difference in your life than any savings you get from cutting out a Starbucks every day or something along those lines. So make sure that you are prioritizing investing at a very early age. Start small. Put whatever you can afford into the investing bucket and make decisions accordingly. Don't wait. Get started immediately, and you will thank yourself in 20 or 30 years down the road. If you do decide to wait and you keep telling yourself that right now things are really expensive, I'm just starting my career, I need this money to go out and socialize, or I need to buy this car, or make this decision and buy this thing, you are not making the right decision. It is more advantageous to you to cut off a portion of that, to learn the behavior of siphoning off a chunk of your income and investing it in a ritualistic way. In the long run, this will yield much greater results for you financially speaking than almost any other behavior that you can practice, especially if you're in your 20s. So we've gone through 5 main lies. There are lots of other things that we're taught depending on the home that you grew up in, the parents that you have, the decisions that were modeled for you by adults around you. You can pick up all sorts of bad ideas and bad behaviors around money. It's never as simple as just taking a pill or adopting a certain subculture, jumping headfirst into that subculture, believing all the things that those gurus are teaching you online. It's much more important to evaluate with a critical lens the lessons you've been taught, try to understand why they're either right or wrong, and adapt those lessons and bring on the things that serve you, but not necessarily whole hog adopt the approaches that people are teaching you in this subculture online. Money ultimately is not everything. It makes your life a lot easier. It can simplify decisions. It can take lots of stress out of the equation, and it is very important. But if you've decided that a certain level of living, of lifestyle is okay for you, and you've achieved that through either a career choice or through saving and investing over a period of time, then more power to you. There is no right or wrong in terms of your ultimate net worth goal in financial independence. You may be perfectly fine retiring with $2 million in the bank and living off of that for the rest of your life in perpetuity because you have a very modest lifestyle. You could also be looking more towards 10 million or 100 million. It doesn't matter what the goal is. All of the practices and behaviors are the same in order to get to that ultimate goal. They just have to be scaled in a different way to reach higher highs. But I can guarantee you that if the 5 things we talked about today aren't practices in your daily thinking about money, that you'll never make it to the goal that you've set in terms of financial independence. Debt is one of the most devastating of the 5 that we've talked about today. Definitely avoid getting yourself into debt over big cars, fancy houses, and things you just don't need. At a certain point in your life, you might achieve enough wealth in order to buy those things. But when you're just getting started, you don't need them and you should avoid them at all costs. I reached my financial independence number in my mid-30s, and I am still driving the same vehicle that I purchased well over 10 years ago. It's got nearly 300,000 miles on it. It's a Toyota. I love it. I maintain it. It's a very simple vehicle, and I will never go into debt to own another vehicle. I will pay cash, absolutely. My property yields me income every single month. I live in it. I live a comfortable lifestyle. I don't need more, but it's an asset that produces money for me, and that money is, although not passive, it's more passive than other sources of income in my life. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's video. There are tons more financial lies that we can get into. If you like this video, let me know. We can jump into more ideas in the future. We can even go more deeply into some of these ideas if that makes sense and is of interest to you. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and definitely come back for future videos. We're growing a community. I really appreciate your support, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.